Good evening and welcome to this leadership conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very happy to be back with you on this Friday evening. We have an esteemed guest with us, Mr. Chandu Nair. Sir, good evening and welcome on behalf of everyone here. Thank you for accepting to speak in the leadership conversation.
Thank you, Professor Sudhakar.
Thank you, sir. It is so nice that you have shared a topic that's very, very interesting and most often not discussed. Failures are not talked about, but I'm sure this topic is going to tell all that is required for us to how we can pivot business failures to make it an entrepreneurial success or lead it to entrepreneurial successes. Thank you, sir. I'm joined by Professor R. Prasad as well. He's the Director of Academic Wing, also Professor and Mentor for the online MBA program. Welcome, Professor Prasad, to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, all the members who have joined today, I'm very, very thankful to you. Your continued association and participation is encouraging us. This week as well, we will be, and also many more weeks to come, we will be talking about some of these leadership lessons that we can take away and apply in our own domains. As you all know, the participants are from various domains, from technology, from marketing, from social work, from sports, so on and so forth. I'm sure these lessons are quite pertinent in all the domains across. So thank you. I will now request Srikanth to run the intro PPT, and I'll take about 2 minutes to make this introduction. And we call it WiseViews Leadership Conversations. These conversations bring in esteemed guests. Today we have Mr. Chandu Nair. As I said, the topic is how business failures can lead to entrepreneurial success. Lessons from a serial entrepreneur and investor. The agenda is very simple. First half an hour is introduction as well as opening remarks by the guest. And the next half an hour, that is 30 minutes to 40 minutes, we'll have the moderated Q&A session where it will be moderated by Professor Prasad and myself. So, gentlemen and ladies, this is Mr. Chandu Nair, and his brief profile I would like to present to you. He has about more than 3 decades of rich experience in industry, consultancy, media, and information services. Previously, he was a co-founder of Scope e-Knowledge Center, a pioneering knowledge process outsourcing company, as also a B2B e-commerce venture, both of which he successfully exited. He held various positions. Prior to that, he was with Asian Paints in sales and Business World magazine as a journalist. This is interesting. You were a journalist as well, sir. In the current role, the key focus for Mr. Chandu Nair is entrepreneurship and helping strengthen the entrepreneurial ecosystem. He advises entrepreneurs and enterprises in creating and building their businesses. Mr. Chandu has direct experience of angel, VC, and strategic investor funding, and has also been a great part of a few exits. Mr. Chandu is on the advisory board of a Chennai-based private equity firm, Fulcrum, and on the board of a social impact fund, Mentera. He is an independent director on the board of India's first retail building products company called Shankara Build Pro. He is also associated with the New York headquartered boutique investment bank, Chesapeake. How do you pronounce that?
Chesapeake.
Chesapeake. Oh, I got it correct. That's a group specializing in cross-border M&A focused on the tech sector. He's also an advisor, resource for startup incubators, such as in IM Kozhikode Live, Crescent Incubator, etc. Mr. Chandu is a postgraduate in management from the prestigious IM Ahmedabad. He's also a visiting faculty in various business schools. He occasionally writes in business publications all across. So, Srikanth, we can close this intro. Yeah, I also would like to share with you that Professor Prasad, who is also on the panel, comes from the background of entrepreneurship, academics, and corporate life. He studied his BTech from IIT Bombay and his MBA from IIM Kolkata. And he heads the academic wing at ICFAI, and he's also heading the online MBA program. Welcome, Professor Prasad, to you as well.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the profile, and I request you to be ready. So, we'll start the session now. The opening remarks will be made by Mr. Chandu Nair, and there's been a fantastic response all across when I posted Mr. Chandu Nair's photo as a flyer on our social media handles, and a lot of them texted me back saying that I have known him, I have met him, We've had a very good relationship with him over the years. People from Chennai, people from Hyderabad, people from Delhi. I think most of the locations, they have responded very positively. And some of the members who have joined today in the audience are leaders in their own respective domains. Some of them from academia, business leaders from ICFAI Business School, I can see, leaders from ICFAI Business School of Bangalore, ICFAI Business School of Gurgaon, and many others. And some of them are from abroad as well. Thank you very much for joining. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you to pay attention and we'll start the session right now. Sir, once again, thank you. Please start your session. Welcome.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Professor Sudhakar and Professor Prasad. Excellent, lovely meeting you. And you are from the other side, I'm from the west and you're from the east. So, and luckily we are meeting right in the center today virtually. So I'm very happy today to have a quick chat with you. It's already 4:10, so we'll probably take about 25 minutes. I'm trying to keep this visual, so let me get started with this presentation. I hope you can see my slides, how business failures can lead to entrepreneurial success. I presume you can see my slide. I've deliberately chosen a very nice and positive image to tell you that, once you leap over your failures, it is inevitably going to lead to success. But I think the key to that is like we know is 90% of success is just being there every day. So with this, let me tell you broadly what the agenda is going to be. A quick introduction which Professor Sudhakar Rao has done, and nice of him to have introduced me thus. A lot of people get very surprised when they hear about me being a journalist in the past, but I can tell you even that experience actually helped me substantially in my business as we pivoted. So a lot of people think, today journalism is a bad word, but let me tell you that media is not as bad as people make it out to be. The second thing I'm going to talk about is, yes, there are various truisms about businesses failing, but let's understand a little bit more about why. And my experience also I'll bring to the fore. Then what has been some of my learnings from my various experiences? I'll try and share some anecdotes and some key points, and maybe some of you will have your own versions of these truths. And then we'll go to the Q&A after this. This first will 20-25 minutes. I hope I'll take for all these points. If there's any other things at the end, we'll do a final wrap up. So let's begin. You already got this background about myself, but the way I look at my mission today is 3 words. The 3 words are helping entrepreneurs succeed. And I look at it as 3 phases: startup, scale up, sell by. In startup, I'm a mentor, resource for incubators and an angel investor. In scale up, I'm typically a consultant for a couple of entrepreneurs at a time, providing 360-degree kind of a view. I call it politely Growth Advisory Services. The acronym is very interesting. It's GAS, GAS. A lot of people think consulting is gas, but I can tell you that it's a lot more than that. And the other part is also providing growth capital through the couple of funds that I'm associated with. The third S is sell by, which is through the investment bank that I represent, Chesapeake Group Incorporated, New York, out of New York in the USA, cross-border mergers and acquisitions. So this is broadly my background. Now, a lot of people may know this, but still it comes as a surprise that failure is the default mode. When you look at new businesses, 90% of new businesses fail. Even in established companies, they tell you that a lot of products fail. So it's not something new. So failure is the default mode. Yet people are surprised when they fail. I think they should be more surprised when they succeed, actually, if you ask me. But people are more surprised when they fail. Now, the bigger surprise is this. A lot of people attribute their failure to the lack of money. That's typically the number one reason people say. It's not wrong. But if you just say, if only I had the money, if only I had this, if only I had that, I think you're mistaken. Because even in a country like the USA, 75% of venture-backed startups fail. Even here, you've seen a lot of startups who are heavily funded. Many of them have just folded up. You've seen this happen in the grocery space, in the food delivery space, in the e-commerce space. You've seen all that. And the other thing which I've seen a lot of startups is a lot of people start with passion and the thing that, I have a great idea, the next best thing to slice bread or some other kind of round idli, but boss, things have been done. But if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. That's an old truism in strategy. So it happens to many people. that gut instinct is fine, passion is good, but if it isn't backed by a plan, I think you're on the road to failure. So these are some truisms that you'll see, and sometimes despite planning, you still fail, and it's okay. But I'll explain to you why. So let's understand. I love this definition of a startup by Steve Blank. Steve Blank says a startup is a temporary organization designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. So even when you're starting up, that look, things aren't very clear. Nothing is clear. You broadly have an idea, you broadly have some direction maybe, but you're still searching for things to do, fit in, come in, fit in place. It's a lot of work still in progress. So that's part of the reason why failure happens. And that's part of the charm also of being in the startup world, because you have options. Now, I think the key thing is, what options do you keep exercising at each time? I think is the secret sauce. The better you are in choosing the options that work, the more successes you have in choosing those options, the better is your chance of success. Now, this is the situation. Let's look at the life cycle of a startup. This is a oft repeated slide, but let's look at this startup. If you look at it, it starts off as a spark, an idea. Now, this is where sometimes the magic first happens. You get something based on personal experience, based on what others tell you, based on some gaps that you see in the market, based on some personal experiences, so many things. And the first question you are confronted with is, do you first of all want to be in this business? That's the first hard decision that you have to take when you come across this idea. The second big thing is, okay, once you do some basic testing, once you are trying to arrive at early product market fit in some sense, you would try to understand the contours of what is this business. You try to understand, is it feasible? You also want to see if somebody else believes in you. Maybe your friends and family who might put some money in it, some early employees or some other co-founder comes and joins you with this. The more you get early customer feedback, early, what should I call, validation from others, be it partners, be it third party agencies, select hires, the more confident you start feeling. But still, in the startup world, you see this going like this 18 to 24 months is what is called the valley of death, because in the first 18 to 24 months, many startups don't last beyond that, and that's called very correctly the valley of death. Many times angel investors like us actually enter at this stage, but we have a truism again in this particular phase. We say fail fast, fail cheap, because at this stage sometimes it's better to say, look, this particular concept, this particular model, this particular direction isn't working, so let me drop this for now, because it's better to fail fast, fail cheap at this stage. Now, what is the interesting thing? Why am I showing this slide? Gentlemen, ladies, you can see at each stage you have to be taking decisions of various types on the product, what kind of pricing, the kind of team people you have, co-founders you have, what kind of structure you have, what kind of channels you use, and so on and so forth. A lot of people start getting frozen. They wait for the right thing to happen, the right time to happen. My personal experience, let me just lay it out there. In the startup world, particularly, my personal feeling is, as my entrepreneur friends keep saying, first, buddies, take the decision, then work at making the decision right. So, many people get frozen, analysis paralysis. They try doing too much work and they try getting things too right. But in today's times, you don't have that luxury of all that. You better keep trying to check whether you're in the broadly the right direction and keep validating as you move along. Now, what happens because you're making these decisions, and you know that most decisions go wrong? There are some estimates which say that only if you're lucky, more than 30 to 40% of your decisions go right. It means you're still on the path to success. I don't have that research readily at hand, but broadly that's what it is. Now, what happens for a typical entrepreneur is this: when he's talking to co-founders, when he's talking to employees, potential employees, when he's talking to potential investors, vendors, etc. So many people, bankers, what have you. What is the situation? The entrepreneur ability of the entrepreneur in this particular area is unknown. The technology or the idea, the potential is not very clear. Market demand for that particular concept is still uncertain. The availability of finance typically for, everybody talks about this as the biggest area, is not very clear again. And finally, the confidence or the gung-ho nature of the team, we don't know whether they last the distance, the execution capability. So at a very simplistic level, the formula for success at this stage is unknown. Now, you're the entrepreneur and you have all these people depending on you. Stakeholders is the word they use. Your job is to try at this stage to reduce, to bring down, to mitigate risk, to bring down the uncertainty, to reduce that feeling of, pet mein good goody. You have to reduce that. That's your core job, and including your own in this process. So it's a big task. It's not a small task. It's a big task, and no wonder a lot of people get a little overwhelmed or start having doubts all the time. And that is perfectly normal. It's nothing to be worried about. So the word that the entrepreneur hears most often, and also any Devdas type, is this two-letter word. And the journey, actually, if you ask me, the journey to success is straightforward. The journey to success is very simple. It is the toughest journey, but it's the very simplest, very easy to explain. It is how do you convert this two-letter word into a three-letter word? And I don't know how many of you are from the Aradhana, who can remember the movie called Aradhana, but you'll remember there's a song that the second Rajesh Khanna sings. Bago mein bahar hai. You might remember that song. And what does he do? He hardwires his potential lover into keeping on saying yes. So that finally when he says, to tumko mujhse pyar hai, in the beginning she says, na, 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 na. But towards the end she says, ha, ha, ha. So the same thing I think applies in life. If you're an entrepreneur, the more you can make people say yes to you, the more you can create situations where it's an yes answer from the other person, the more successful you can be. And that's, I think, the core. How do you turn a situation into a favorable one for yourself? I think is the core of it. And let's understand this as well. This is what I have seen. I don't know what you've seen, but an absence of a yes, in my view, is inevitably a no, especially when it comes to investing money. So this is also a very interesting thing for me. Now let us take three. I've divided this into now two areas. One, I'm talking about 4-5 reasons of failure. Then I'm going to 3 buckets, and I'll talk about each bucket, separately. The most common reason for failure typically is cash flow. Cash flow is like blood. If it doesn't flow, you are dead. Correct? So, and a lot of people don't understand this. Even in the stock market, companies which have strong free cash flow are companies which sustain themselves, which are stronger. It's been established for all these years. However much you talk about bloated valuations, but the fundamental fact still remains that companies with a superior cash flow tend to outlast everybody else. That's a very simple fact of life. So typically they run out of cash. The second big thing is that there is no market need. The market doesn't respond positively to whatever product or service or whatever else you have to offer. Third, there's nothing which is very unique or differentiated about your idea or your product or your offering. Fourth, this is very common nowadays also. There's a lot of co-founder problems with the team, execution related issues. Especially in the tech world, talent has become a big challenge. Monthly increments are becoming very common. How do you manage all this? Now, one important thing that somebody like Ben Gross has studied 200 of his investee companies and found out that some companies, despite having funding, despite looking like they had early product market fit, it is only a few of them that became mega hits for him in terms of returning money. And he went and studied them in detail, and he found that the single important reason is timing. You have to ride the cycle. Let me show you my personal example. When I started my business, I first was doing what is called bespoke market research, industrial market research, business to business research in India. So it was already a mature business, and it was, a percentage of the total revenue, of the overall sales budget. And it was always something that you had to, the L1 was always an issue. Then when the internet boom came, we pivoted to becoming a .com content and information services company. we actually took off. We managed to get a few clients. We used similar skills, moved to an adjacency. So it's very interesting how we pivoted and we created new sets of skills as well. And for 4 years, we did pretty well, 98 through to 2002. We did pretty well, I must say. 2002, you might recollect, there was a NASDAQ crash, there was an internet bust, and a lot of companies tanked. And, at that point in time, whoever were the few investors and funds that were there, all backed off into funding. At that time, we said, we went back to the drawing board, our backs to the wall, and we asked ourselves, what can we do? We looked at the broad trends. IT outsourcing had happened. Y2K was a success. India actually came to the world's rescue. You might recollect, that COBOL issues and all that, Y2K problems. India really, IT came into its own. Indian BPO also had started making progress at that time, early stages of transaction processing, call centers, etc. You might remember Chetan Bhagat's book also, One Night at the Call Center or some such thing. So you might remember all those things came at that time. We thought when we looked at it that this is the opportune time for knowledge process outsourcing also. Companies would start doing this next. We were one of the first companies in India in 2002 end to start looking at knowledge process outsourcing for overseas companies. So we used the same skill sets, the same competencies. One competency we lacked, which is overseas marketing. And that's something that we had to work at for the next 2 years. But touch wood, just give a long story short, that pivot that we made substantially increased our attractiveness to investors, substantially increased the way we could scale up our business using the same skills. And always I keep remembering this because I say, the value of information is appreciated much more overseas than in India. So the way I remember talking to my colleagues is, we propitiate Saraswati in India, but we obtain Lakshmi abroad, because Westerners love to have time value of money, are prepared to pay the money required in order to save time, in order to get that precise competitive information. History question for you. The earliest recorded date in Indian history is 326 BC, I'm told. Earliest recorded date. Why do we know it is earliest recorded date is 326 BC? That is the year in which Alexander invaded India. How do we know it? Because the Greeks recorded it. Okay, much more clearly than we did, very clearly with that date. Why am I saying this? Because we found that data, information, research was a bigger business overseas than in India. In India, at that time, it was barely 2,000 crores. The niche market that we addressed, one small niche of the business information, scientific information market we addressed at that time itself was $20 billion. Where is 2,000 crores? Where is 20 billion? The order of magnitude was completely different. All we had to do was add one more competency, which is overseas marketing, and tailoring our products more for the overseas market, changing the approach to go to market. We did this and we successfully managed to exit after scaling our business up from 60 people in 2002 to 1,100 in 2011. So it is very possible for you to take what skill sets you have, what competencies you have, move into adjacencies, add one more bit, and actually pivot successfully. Unfortunately, what happens to most of us when we are faced with a bad situation, we blame the external situation, we blame others. And this is what this cartoon says, and this man says, this is the CEO, obviously. We all have our failures, but some of us have other people to blame. That's what happens to most of us. What is the point blaming somebody else? You can't really do this. The other thing which I find people do is they stop doing things. Because if I do things, I get criticized. So I love this quotation by Napoleon Hill, who says, one thing to avoid criticism is to do nothing and be a nobody. The world will then not bother you. But is that something, one way is to blame others, the other way is not to do anything. I really feel that this kind of a defeatist approach really doesn't do anything for you. So here is where I'm going to take those three buckets and explain to you a little bit of my experiences. And then I think I have about, we started at 4:11, we are at 4:30. So we have about 5-6 minutes. I'll close and then we'll open it for Q&A. First, which is product market related. I personally feel a lot of companies, a lot of people say, if I just copy from overseas, and come up with a foreign idea and I can do a zip zap zoom and bring it to India, I don't think it works. Look at Kellogg as a case in point. They came saying that they will change the breakfast habits of India. But their cereals, when they first came, they realized Indians like to have hot milk, not cold milk, number one. Number two, Indians, most of them don't like sweet breakfast. They like a little more kara, spicy breakfast. Today, what you're seeing after 20 odd years, Kellogg's is making upma and poha, correct? So what we are seeing is a clone of a foreign idea is not necessarily the best thing for you to look at, and especially in the startup world. Second, it's very clear that you need to have something which is a strong, unique differentiator, which is sustainable and continuing, especially vis-a-vis competition, which means you have to work at being relevant. How can you stay relevant? That's the key thing. There's no escape. The final fellow who's paying you money is the customer. So I would say somehow or the other, keep your focus on getting the customer's point of view. The fourth thing which I found is initially we used to make a lot of assumptions. And I personally feels that assumptions are the mother of all screw-ups. If somebody tells you something, please ask them why. There are lots of approaches. For example, in quality, we have the 5 why approach. Start using such approaches. Get methodical about how you examine what happens. Get a reason why things happen. When you have customer failures or your product failures, understand why it has happened. Second, even if you assume at each stage, please validate. Today, compared to the days gone by, Professor Prasad, and others come from an era which we have seen cyclo-styling, we have seen overhead projector. You could not change that stencil. You could not change the slide in the overhead projector once you made it. You have to make a new one. Today you can edit even in the last second. Use that technology, use these advances to start making a minimum viable product, test it, check it, iterate, repeat, rinse, keep doing that. What is your problem? I find a lot of people spend too much time in the laboratory or in the safety of their offices, not go out and validate it in the marketplace. Please don't do it. Finally, don't be over possessive about my baby, my idea. My idea is so precious. It should not be changed. It should be only in that form. Mothers can afford to be possessive about their baby because they can't do much about the baby once it's come out. But you can, when you're on the startup world, you can keep changing. That's the beauty of it, right? You can pivot. So my request to you is don't be hung up about your baby. Keep looking at what makes sense for you and for the business. If you bring your ego into the picture, you're doomed. Leave the ego outside the door every day you come into the office. That's my humble request to you. And when you're talking especially to customers. So I remember Thomas Alva Edison in this particular case. He said, I have not failed. And he talked about people today have a different view of history, but let's assume that he's still the inventor of the light bulb as we know it. So he says, I found 1,000 ways or 10,000 ways that won't work. That's really what it is. Let's imagine a small baby. When it starts to walk, every time it starts walking, plop, plop, it falls down, right? What does it do each time? Picks itself up and starts walking again. So to me, you have to be like that little baby. Start picking yourself up and walking. Because success is nothing but getting up one time more than you fall. That's all that is to it. But you have to be at it. And that's the key thing to it. So this is the other approach. If you want to reach your goal faster, double your failure rate. So try more things, try more options, because it might fail, but something will succeed. Let's understand even 3M's Post-it came as a result of an accident. They found something which sticks but doesn't fully stick. They said, what can we do with it? So when the first product came out with the 3M's Post-it, they called it permanently temporary. Now imagine they found a use for it, correct? So that's what the beauty of all this is. The second thing, which is very critical, the first is the idea, the product. The second big thing is the individuals, the core people. My personal take is, today I would say it is values, value, and valuation. If you ask me, valuation is taking too much precedence. But I personally feel a core team, for it to have alignment, for it to be able to easily take decisions, you need to have core values. The second thing I would say is trust but verify, like President Reagan said. Credential key employees, credential your own co-founders. It's very good if you're co-founders and you have worked together in the past. In Israel, many co-founders have been in the army together. So if you have sweated together, you will find that you know the guy together because you know how he or she handles pressure. Third, other things being equal, consider having a kind of a written MOU on key matters. Fourth, very importantly, establish means of communication, formal and informal. Go out for an evening tea, or if you have other spirits in mind, please indulge in, but have methods of communication. More importantly, also have conflict resolution mechanism, because egos, when they come into the picture, they kill both you and the company. And small things, it may look small, but roles, titles, who gets publicity outside, who represents the company, who is first among equals, think about it. Lastly, so here is a statement, which I found understood a little bit of time it took me to understand, but a beer buddy is not necessarily the best person you want as a partner. So this is a statement made by Rockefeller. He said a friendship founded on business is a much better than a business founded on friendship. I'm giving this you as a thought. Okay. Would you rather be doing business with your friend, or would you rather become friends with those you do business with? It's a question, it's a philosophical question, and there is merit in what Rockefeller says. Finally, when I look at the business failure and entrepreneur, I think your attitude is everything. Even if a business fails, I think carry with you this thing that the business failed. You did not. Okay. The second thing I would say, if more you internalize that failure and say, I failed, you feel like a bum. I think it is important to say the business failed. Sit back and ask yourself logically, why did it fail? What could I have done better? What could I have done differently? Second is to recognize that these steps are like baby steps. They are stepping stones to success. Thirdly, many times in my personal experience also, many times you don't know why you succeeded. You don't know whether you are just lucky, sometimes. So, but failures have a hard habit of making you learn much more. Correct? Rejection, even like if you are in school or college and you had that crush, by chance you expressed that crush and you got put down, it taught you much more than somebody saying yes. Okay. And in my view, failures are often necessary for our entrepreneurs to recognize a central fact. In order to, what Gandhiji said, right? Be the change you want to see. Same way, failures help you understand what changes you need to make in yourself before you can make changes in others, or you can make changes in anything else. So this is what I would say. And therefore, the way I view failure, the way I have viewed it also, is that I see it as success in progress, not as something as a separate end in itself. And I don't feel anything bad about it. I think if you look at it positively, you're in a better place. So Bezos, I think, has this very important thing that a lot of people tend to give up, like I said before. He said, I know if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I know what I really would regret is not trying again. And this is where I feel that today's world is very much different from the world that I graduated from. Today's world doesn't mind failure. Today's world even sometimes accepts and recognizes failure and uses that and rewards you. Many ex-entrepreneurs are today holding good positions in other startups, in other companies, because companies also value such entrepreneurial skills and talent. Finally, my view is this, that entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't. And in my own particular case, I thought I would retire by the time I was 50. I mean, by the time I was 45, I delayed it by 3-4 years, but let me put it this way, that I could do that thanks to the fact that I realized in my mind, if you look at the business model, what does it say? It talks about creating, it talks about delivering, and it talks about capturing value. Okay, creating, delivering, and capturing value. But as an entrepreneur, it is after a few years that you can also realize the value. And this is what I would leave you with, that saying that can you give up a few years of your life, which most people can't, work that hard, work that focused, so that you can spend the rest of your life that most people can't. Finally, a lot of funders, investors, partners like this kind of an entrepreneur, one who goes into entrepreneurship voluntarily and who has a high growth orientation for scale. This person is what I call the maximizer. And this person is the key focus for outside investors. This is your, local vegetable vendor, mochi, cobbler, etc., who get into it because they know their choice and whose growth orientation is very low. There are entrepreneurs who say, look, I want to have a great lifestyle business. So for them, people, possibly it's better to have debt, personal loans, etc. These are people who get into family businesses, third generation, second generation. Their level of control is very low. So this is the key focus, according to me, ladies and gentlemen. So my thing to you is, can you become a maximizer? And it is possible. Today's world, last 15, 20 years says there is opportunity for first generation entrepreneurs to make good, to make great businesses, and to also create some wealth for themselves and the people that they are working with. So to conclude, often a business model, a business might look great on paper, but actually, if you ask me, it's a set of hypotheses, a lot of assumptions underlying these hypotheses. And it is important for us to understand this and keep validating these hypotheses and these assumptions. And in entrepreneurship, first you try and figure out, it's a maze. You try and figure out where you want to be. Hopefully you find your place. As you find your place, you find that you have to rearrange the pieces, pivoting. Then you still find, okay, I have to change again, possibly. Hopefully that leads you to money, and then it's a cycle. It's up to you whether you want to make it virtuous or vicious. That's your choice based on the decisions you make. So I'll conclude with this last slide. I've learned so much from my mistakes that I'm thinking of making a few more. So with this, gentlemen, ladies, you've been a fantastic audience. Thank you very much. I'll hand it back to Professor Sudhakar Rao to moderate the questions and answers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. This is a very interesting and very curious way of holding our attention to what you have wanted to say all the time. I think this flows from years of experience that you've had, years of success, years of failure, years of learning, and you have very beautifully looked at the anatomy of startup ecosystem and the startup itself, and various stages at which these startups are likely to fail, and then what are the things that one can pivot and one can work on so that they can lead that into a success. I think this is very, very useful. In my view, I'm not repeating everything because the time is not on our side at this point in time. So I want to say only one thing. It is a very difficult exercise to become an entrepreneur that people back you. I think this came towards the end. But in the beginning, we were talking about how the ecosystem deals with this startup, where the abilities of the entrepreneur itself are unknown, like the way the market demand is unknown, like the way the financiers or the financial support is unknown. So several unknowns that we were dealing with that. And added to that, you can't get good hires, good people to join you at that time. So the ability of the team and the organization is probably attacked by several unknowns. And from that stage to graduate to becoming an entrepreneur that people can back you is quite a bit. And I'm sure what I gather while listening to you is that, sir, you would have been a very good mentor to all the organizations that you mentored and spent time with them. I'm sure they benefited and they also enjoyed working with you. That's what I gather. So thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, what we do now is we will go to the Q&A session immediately. These are clusters of questions, and these questions are gathered at the time of registration. You would have keyed in various questions. We curated them, landscaped them to have a sequence of discussion at this point in time. The first cluster will be taken up by Professor Prasad, and I'll come back for the second cluster. We'll try and make sure that we don't use much time. More time is given to the speaker so that he can elaborate on the answers and the responses that we would like to have. May I now request Professor Prasad to start cluster number 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Rao. The session has brought out an overview about what challenges entrepreneurs face and traditionally where they make mistakes. It looks at it from a business side, it looks at it from a mindset side, and we've got a number of inputs. Now, where I will start the first cluster is essentially about where we are. So we've got, they say there are about close to 50,000 startups, and that India needs a lot of startups, and it's so diverse and complex that there is this possibility that we can have startups because we've got problems everywhere and we need solutions for all those problems. So the need for entrepreneurs is very high. If you look at all those who are working, and here I'm also connecting to those doing the program, many have entrepreneurial dreams. When you talk to them at the stage of selection discussion, they always voice something is there at the back of their mind. They want to do something. And I think given the times, they also have the opportunity to do that. So if it is an idea or a thought at this stage, or in some cases it's a seed, what can be done to encourage them? Is there a procedure, process, steps to realize what they have in their mind?
Yeah, see, one good thing is when you talk today of the entrepreneur ecosystem, you have support at various levels, right? From idea to prototyping, from prototyping to commercialization, from commercialization to actually making it an investable business, and then thereafter for scaling up. IIT Madras, for example, has 5 different centers helping students or even faculty members. So one is to try and see where you can go and link up with such resources. The second is to go to, if you look at they say when you go to Kabini or any other jungle safari, you go at a time when the tigers and other big animals come to the watering hole, right? Because you don't go during rain time when everywhere there's water. So which is the watering hole for good entrepreneurs? So there are associations, there are organizations. So for example, you take your own city of Hyderabad, you have the Telangana Tea Hub, which is doing a lot of good work. There is TIE Hyderabad, the Indus Entrepreneurs. It's an association, the world's largest non-for-profit association of entrepreneurs, which is also helping entrepreneurship. And they also have senior entrepreneurs, experienced entrepreneurs willing to act as mentors for free. So I think we should take advantage of the resources and the ecosystem that is there and start figuring out what can you do. There are also structured programs. For example, if you take Stanford, they have a program in India, which is Stanford Spark for those who have the initial idea, and Stanford Seed for those who already have a business but want to scale it up. So I think it is only the lack of information maybe that people really don't know how to get kick-started, Better to first network, look at all these resources, and then utilize these resources very well.
Let me also put in an associated question. So we have a category which is willing to utilize the ecosystem. We've got the passion and the energy to do so. But we also have a lot of people, a category which has got it at the back of their mind, but it's not moved to this particular stage. So what can we do as a society in order to motivate them?
So one is, in colleges, you have things like e-cells, which is like entrepreneurship cells. So you have programs like this. There are people like Vadwani Foundation which have done programs in the college level. There is an organization like Udayam, ex-Flipkart senior tech guy called Makin Maheshwari. Udayam has created curriculum at the school level. It's being used in Delhi. In Tamil Nadu, curriculum created by TIE Chennai is now being started to be used in schools. So I think, if you want to look at it, structuring in some way, at the school level, using these things like e-cells, having competitions many times, all of them help you. So there are today organizations like TIE which have the TIE Youth Entrepreneurship Awards. It goes global. So I'm happy to say that our TIE Chennai, 2 times schools from TIE Chennai won. Okay, school entrepreneurs won. So if you have these kind of competitions, you have various kinds of, even somebody like ICFAI can do it. Like suppose you have startup competition, startup idea competition, you have a fair, put various stalls. Each person then talks to people. You give each attendee who's coming, say 1,000 rupees, and say if there are 20 ideas over there, where will you put this 1,000 rupees? And at the end of the day, the fellow who got the most money is the fellow who is the winner. Now, these are different ways for us to help these people figure out whether they are on the right track. I mean, I'm just giving it very simply because we want to answer more questions. And yes, I must also tell you today that there is a lot of free money out there. There are grant money, there are incubators and accelerators which give you money. 3 of my companies have gone, 2 of them to Microsoft Accelerator, where they got up to $200,000, $250,000 as free Azure and software, etc. The Google is doing it. GeoNext has powered more than 170 startups. So there's a lot of free money. There's also competitions where you can get money, startup competitions, Indian, local, global, etc.
Thank you. I think we do have, some understanding broadly of the starting stages when it's there in the mind, and then what we can do to make it a culture in the country, and the mechanisms which can be used. I'd now like to move to the next question. In the development of a venture, what are the most critical stages where things can get stuck? And can you illustrate that with your experience as an entrepreneur?
Okay, the first thing is like I talked earlier also, the biggest thing is the two biggest successes, the things which either are the success or the failure of the company are what I call the two I's. One is the idea and two is the individual. Okay, so when I say idea, does the idea have a market? So first thing is to figure out acceptance in the marketplace, which is why I talked about early validation. Test it, get a minimum viable product, test it out, check it out, keep making changes to it, iterate over there. The second thing, as an individual, you have to evolve. See what worked if you are at the idea stage. At the next stage, between idea to prototype, then from prototype to commercialization to early scaling, to early growth, then growth to scaling, the entrepreneur has to evolve. Or you have to have the magnanimity to say, look, like Jack Dorsey of Twitter said, I would like to be a nerd and sit, be looking at a product. I will hire an external CEO. So I think if you recognize that at each stage you need skill sets, you need complementary skill sets, you need different approaches, different attitudes. These are for me the two biggest stumbling blocks: product market fit and the ability of the individual or the team members to grow and evolve as the company evolves. I mean, there are lots of other factors which is also to do with money, but I think if these two are sorted, many investors back a good idea, but they back great individuals.
Thank you. I think the focus has come in on something which is very specific, particularly for the audience which wants to try this out and start thinking about it a bit more seriously and perhaps start doing also.
I just wrote a column in Money Control. Unfortunately, it's behind a paywall. How to make your business investable. So it just came out yesterday. So unfortunately, it's behind a paywall.
Okay. Can you throw some light on the current entrepreneurship ecosystem in India? I mean, you did delve about the TIE. You're also associated with an IN.
Yeah.
So can you just give a framework of the current ecosystem, and what are the areas where there are gaps, and we need
first
to
and foremost, compared to even 10 years ago, the ecosystem has considerably developed. When I say the ecosystem, it is right from helping people at the school stage to start thinking about entrepreneurship. Okay, that has started only in the last 2 to 3 years. But even at college, there are incubators today. There are what is called the technology business incubators. And today, the government of India, under the DST, Department of Science and Technology, is actually supporting a lot of these incubators. So colleges, I think the management needs to get more enlightened on how to use this TBI. There's also Atal Tinkering Labs at schools, for which the government of India is also giving money to help innovate. Now, second thing is, once you are, apart from technology TBIs, there are also other incubators. They are also getting supported by the government. Today, both central and state governments are giving a lot of money at the early stage. So, for example, Telangana government, Kerala government, Tamil Nadu government have something called innovation voucher programs. They have programs to support patenting. If you want to patent, they give you money for helping you patent it. They give you money sometimes in certain cases even they take you abroad for certain things. They have some tie-ups, like Telangana T-Hub has tie-ups with some overseas people. They help you to take you abroad. Then, so there's a lot of support from government and non-governmental bodies, plus academic bodies. There's a lot of support over there. There are also private organizations vying to work with startups. Like I talked about a conglomerate like Reliance. There are also large organizations who have corporate investment arms willing to invest in startups or work with startups. So all this is happening. See, Tata really in the recent past has acquired several startups, and it is happening all over the place. So I would say that compared to, there are so many components of the ecosystem, each of which is much better. What is the deficiencies? Like 87% of funding last year went to 3 cities: Bangalore, NCR, and Mumbai. Balance 13% went to another 4-5 cities mostly, which is Hyderabad, Chennai, Pune, and little bit, I think, Chandigarh, Jaipur, etc. Kolkata. It isn't going beyond these 9 cities. It hasn't gone. So I would like it to see a little more widespread, geographically. People in tier 3, tier 4 towns find it little challenging. So there's a lot more work to be done out there. So that's one big deficiency. Two, women still constitute a lower percentage still of formal entrepreneurship. So that's another big, issue there. Thirdly, a lot of people complain that students, people with a background from certain institutes like IIT, your alma mater, or IIM, are favored over others. So I think some of these things are still happening. Fourthly, a lot of the money coming to startups is not Indian money, it is still foreign money, especially at the growth stage and all that. We need a lot more Indian investors. So I'm giving very quickly here. There's lots more I can say, but I'm stopping here.
Thank you. I think that does give us an overview of what is currently happening as well as the gaps. I think the last question in this cluster, which I'd like to put for want of time, there are a few more, but the one is that, a lot of people, entrepreneurship gurus, mentors, coaches, say that they invest in the person and the team. What is your view on this? And what do you look for in the person and the team before you invest?
No, this is what, it's quite correct. Almost all of us say the individual comes before, because we say a great team can do wonders with an average idea, but an average team can do many blunders with a brilliant idea. Okay, so any other things being equal, people back a great team. So what is a great team? So one is, ideally, what I've seen, if you look at it, even in terms of funding, etc., while people may say that there are these 19-year-old boys running Zepto, they are more the exception than the rule. If you see bulk of the funding, bulk of the funding is coming to people with, median is coming for people who have had 12 to 15, 18 years experience. Okay. Why does it happen? Because they've already made mistakes on somebody else's money before they go to make mistakes on their own money or on investors' money, correct? So because they've already been through the rope. Second, they already have a network. Thirdly, they already have potential to have co-founders or get brilliant hires. They also have a pretty good understanding of the marketplace, what is going to work. Girish Madhurabodham, who has built Freshworks, he first worked in what is today called Zoho. He first worked on something like help desk software over there, understood a lot of deficiencies, built it up from there. From help desk, he understood, that customers have many other issues. So from just being Fresh Desk was the original name, he created a suite of products, a suite of offerings. Today it's called Freshworks. And instead of just competing in the help desk software area, he's now competing at a much broader, almost like competing with the Salesforce person. So that's what I mean by, when you say great team, somebody who's already gone through the ropes, whom you don't have to spoon feed. If you were to look at it like, what do you do for an invalid? You buy rice, you get rice, boiled rice, you cool it down, then you put some curd, you press it, you mix it up together, you maybe put some ginger, you crush it, and then you put it into his mouth. You don't want that kind of an entrepreneur, right? You want an entrepreneur to say, I've got this curd rice now, I fortified it with beautiful new minerals and vitamins, and this curd rice is the best curd rice you can ever get, more than what grandma did. That's the entrepreneur you're looking for. If curd rice doesn't work, he'll make smoothie. So he'll know how to pivot. So that's what really we mean by a great team. Somebody who will somehow work hard to make sure he succeeds, he or she.
Thank you. And, just to supplement that area with a question, how do you sense the behaviorals and the mindset?
Okay, so this is where what I call CPM, which is basically nothing to do with the political party, is what I call chemistry. Do I feel comfortable? Do I get a sense of comfort? Is that this guy I'm saying guy just, very casually, that he's willing to listen? Because a good entrepreneur, like a good manager or a good leader, the biggest trait is he willing to listen, take input, and not only to me, to customers, to partners, to vendors. So first and foremost is you get that sense that this guy is aware and willing to listen and keep adapting. It's a chemistry related situation. Once the chemistry, is okay, what I call physics, action, reaction, things start happening. And you start wanting to talk to that person a little bit more. Once you have the chemistry and physics in motion, then the math will work out, which is valuation, remuneration, what stake should I get, etc. So broadly, very quickly, this is what I call my own concoction, CPM.
Fantastic. I think that's very easy to remember. Looks
Yeah,
like it connects to the heart, then the
correct.
hands, and then the brain.
Yeah, and the gut also.
Yes.
So it's a 3 level, my brain, heart, and gut. And also in all this is trust but verify. See, which is why I think students or entrepreneurs from certain institutes tend to get backed more, because credentialing mechanisms are far easier.
Thank you. I think with this, we'll end this cluster. I give it back to Professor Rao.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Sir, it is going on at a very good pace, and it's quite interesting, and there are many more issues for us to actually delve into. However, keeping the time as a constraint, what I would like to do is I'll just select a couple of questions from my cluster. In the meantime, I request the audience to raise their hand so that we can allow them to directly ask the question to you. This is over and above the questions that we would have received. Sometimes conversation spurs new questions, and new questions should be allowed. So that's the spirit behind allowing them. In the meantime, I'll take my question. So what is the role of incubators and accelerators? What roles do they play, and when should potential entrepreneurs approach them?
Okay, so there are many incubators all over the place. If I recollect last, because I did some study in Tamil Nadu 3 years ago, there were at that time 66 TBIs, technology business incubators. But you ask me, probably only 7 or 8 were properly functioning. The rest of them were like, what should I call, the token heroine in a Bollywood movie. Just there for embellishing the thing of the institute, not really adding value to the students or entrepreneurs. So choose the right kind of incubator, so go and check which incubator has actually got missing. Now, why am I saying incubators are important or accelerators after that are important is, other things being equal, you have a higher chance of getting funded if you are from an incubator, because a lot of groundwork has been done by the good incubator in preparing the entrepreneur, in helping the entrepreneur get better product market fit, introducing to customers. They usually have a panel of mentors. So the mentors also work with that entrepreneur. So and they have free courses, to help the entrepreneur understand a lot of things. They have workshops. So they have experts coming and talking to them. And many times they also have tie-ups. Like, for example, one incubator I'm associated with has tie-up with Zoho, and Zoho gives free stuff to the incubating companies. So there's a lot of advantages when you're at an incubator. Once you have an idea which is pretty decent and you want to test it out, I think it's good time for you to go and check the incubator at a good incubator. Accelerators come little later, when you're going at the next stage.
Great. Okay. I think the supply side of incubating partners or incubating providers, there are many these days, and each one is doing their own bit. However, there's a lot of confusion also from startups' point of view. One is to go by the image of the institution which is incubating. For example, some of the prestigious business schools also have incubators, and those incubators are not necessarily the best or as good as the parent institution itself.
Correct.
So that's where the confusion lies. Of course, accelerators come at a later stage, but startups generally tend to get confused, and most of them are going by the number game. How many lakh square feet of incubator space that we are providing, so on and so forth, instead of real-time conversion or scaling up of these startups into successful ventures.
Let them go to the actual incubator sites and see what are the companies that are already incubated there.
Correct.
Speak to a couple of them. See, in all this, if the entrepreneur is not doing his own homework, he has to do a little bit of homework and talk to people. That's why first, that's why I said important he goes to the watering holes, whatever those watering holes are. He has to start doing networking. See, for example, if you want to raise funds 2 years later, you might start wanting to network today.
Okay. Right. So that's a good advice, and I'm sure they should verify. They should talk to the people who are already benefited, who are already being incubated, so on and so forth. So the next question, if you permit me, I'll take the next question, and that is, There are various types of fundings available for ventures, and some you are based on your own experience and your association. Can you brief us about the major funding options used by Indian entrepreneurs and what works best and when?
So initially, say it depends on the type of startup you are. Today, if you are a deep tech startup, or a medical technology startup, which is invasive technology, it takes 7 to 8 years for things to get approved or things to get understood, because it's a little deeper technology. In the case of deep tech, the situation is slightly different. Let me put it this way, that usually they it's a solution looking for a problem. In the typical entrepreneurship, it's there are problems and you create the solution. So in deep tech, medical tech, it takes a little time. So there, it's better for you to go through, the grant route. And there are grants from BIRAC, for example, in biotechnology. A DST has grants. Today, there's a startup seed fund. They give up to 20 lakhs grant money, or they give up to 50 lakhs option through loans, startup seed fund. Okay. So that's a good place to start. Also try initially, before that, even you can even start at going for competitions. Today, there are several startup competitions where you have opportunity to win fair amount of money. Not just Shark Tank is not a competition in that sense, it's actually getting funding, but there are a lot of other startup competitions. So this is also a good way for you to test and validate. Subsequently, of course, friends and family are the first route. There are today seed funds, angel investors, micro VCs, and crowdfunding platforms at the next level. Then you have venture capitalists, and then you go on to the, what should I call, the private equity funds. Today, there are also debt-related instruments which are more easily accessible for startups. For example, if you're a direct-to-consumer company, you can even get to revenue-based financing. So there are a lot of other options as you grow. But let me say, there's a lot more options today compared to even 10 years ago.
Fantastic. So that's very, very clear. There are lots of options, and one can choose at a different stage what works best for them. Sir, Professor Samyadeep Chakravarti has a question. He can come on and ask the question. In the meantime, I'll take another one which I have already. Sir, the question is, are there any telltale signs which indicate to an entrepreneur that his venture is failing and he should step back and probably adapt either the model or the product or service or the price or the team or people?
Yeah.
Is there any particular model or a dashboard that you can suggest?
See, the metrics keep changing at each stage, but the key thing for me always is, how much acceptance from customers are you getting? Start from a simple thing like even a website. How many customers are visiting your website? That's our first is number of visitors. Okay. Then number of daily visitors. Then number of times visited per day. Number of minutes spent per visit. Number of minutes spent overall. Okay. Then what activities do they perform on that site? If I find there's a declining trend, even in a simple thing like this, it means I'm not able to hold their interest. So either there's something wrong in what I'm putting out there, or I'm not attracting the right audience. So I must figure out whether my go-to market is wrong, or whether what I'm putting out there is not good enough for that particular audience. So there is a mismatch over there. So the biggest typical issues are a lack of acceptance of what what my offering is from my desired audience. I'm neither getting the desired audience, nor probably I'm putting the desired content or the desired offering. So typically that's the problem. In some cases, what I've seen, like recently in some tech companies, they've had a good product, they've had decent customer traction. They've come out with a very unusual situation that the talent is disappearing because they are not able to hold on to them, and it happens. The third thing which happens sometimes, is some extreme situations. We had a startup where we invested money, and 60%, 70% revenue came from one single customer. So you have a concentration of revenue. One fine day, the customer said, I'm taking this in-house. For 2 months, the startup struggled to find a replacement customer, nor could it get investors, or somebody else to put in the money. So within 2 months, it said, look, I can't operate. And it folded up. So the multiple telltale signs like this, like concentration of revenue, lack of customer acceptance or interest, your offering is not differentiated enough, and competitors are eating away at you. multiple things like this will give you early, there are trailing signs and there are forward looking signs. So it is to have those metrics which are forward looking rather than trailing. Revenue and all is trailing. So you need to have forward looking metrics.
Absolutely. I think it makes an absolute sense in what you have explained just now, sir. Look for forward looking hints and indicators rather than trailing indicators like revenue. Revenue is the one which tells you at a later stage, but probably in early stages, you can understand how the customer is responding. Are you able to hold the attention of the customer through variety of means? And one such you have explained is on the website, their traffic, their uniqueness, how much of time they're spending, so on and so forth. I think there are indicators and one should keep their eyes and ears constantly open and keep looking for it as entrepreneurs. Is Dr. Samyadeep ready, or should I go to the next question? Samyadeep, you can start.
He's ready. I can see him. So,
yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chandu. One question I have is, because we are trying to set up some incubator in our B school. So the main question which I have is, from the past experiences, that I've seen that B schools students usually stay for a shorter period. Maybe by the time their ideation starts till the time it gets converted, it's almost 6 months gone. And then by the time they are in the incubator, it's nearing a year. And then they have only 1 year time to find a fruitful solution. But towards the third semester, that is after 1.5 years, the placement comes. So a major source, what I've seen is all those nice ideas, all those ideologies, they die out. And so can you tell, I mean, some way how we can have them hold on to their ideas? Because unlike engineering colleges who have a 4-year span, when they have some way to other to keep them on board, we B schools find it very short. It's very
so I put an existential question back to you, Professor Chakravarti. Is, what should your incubator focus on? Okay, and my view is that students are not the best source for you.
Right.
You must have 2-3 customer segments. One customer segment should be people who are alumni, for example, who have spent 7-8 years, but still want to work with the with the alma mater, because they already have some money, they have already been in business for some time. Relying on current students will never make you a successful incubator. That's my experience. So you have 2-3 categories of people. One is alumni. 2 is people who can be who are from the vicinity where your university or institute. Like for example, in IIT Madras, you will find Krishnan Balasubramaniam and who's the other, Satya. They have some 9 or 10 startups that they have worked with, that they have taken a stake. So because they are seen as an Indian Oil Corporation or ONGC and all trust these professors, for example. So wherever your university can build some core skills and can attract local entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, even across the country in that particular area. So electric mobility, IIT Madras is very strong. You'll find some areas, IIT Bombay is very strong. So can you build 2-3 areas of expertise? Your university then attracts good entrepreneurs from that space. So alumni. Second is great university linkages which can help the entrepreneur. Third is, have something like virtual incubators, for example. That is, you don't have the fellow sitting there, but you have mentors, you have advisors, you have customer connects, which helps the entrepreneur. So the question I'll put forward to you is, what can you do to make your incubator self-sustaining and financially independent of the university?
I can understand that. Thank you, sir. I mean, I rather got my answer.
Yeah.
So we have to have different sources. Thank you, sir.
Exactly.
Thank you, Sudhakar. Thank you
very much, sir. I think it is very, very relevant to all of us in terms of what are the questions that we need to ask ourselves, specialize and use and leverage the linkages that we build on and spread it across some of the bright alumni so that our incubator is a success. So thank you very much, sir, for that. So you're also, am I audible, sir?
Yes, please.
Yeah. You're also associated with that Chesapeake cross-border M&A, which specializes in tech. What according to you are the potential areas for M&A, and what do investment banks look for in a potential acquisition?
So, if you look at it, both with, I'm not restricting myself to Chesapeake. I'll tell you, each person has what they call a thesis. I'll give you an example of a thesis, okay? One thesis is if you take SaaS, software as a service. Classic, if you look at it, India is not a great market for software because apart from Tally, you can hardly think of any other software companies who have succeeded. Now, 2-3 others are slowly coming. So, but India is a great place for frugal engineering of software products now. As we have seen, several SaaS companies have come up, some of them have become unicorns and they're doing quite well. So, what you should think of is global IP, frugal engineering in India, but overseas market gives you lower cost of production, but pretty decent cost of revenue, pretty decent revenue possibilities. Plus, you need to have a go-to market which is very, very efficient. So today, in the last few years, you can sit in India and attack the SMB market, small, medium business market, using a combination of lead generation, a team which is for lead generation. That lead generation leads to inside sales, leads to transition, and then leads to account management over a period of time. So if you build that effective sales engine, which is inbound rather than outbound, as was a classic case with software services, this is really going to help you scale up. So thesis one is frugal engineering in India, but with IP protection and a global overseas market. So number one. Number two thesis is completely the opposite. There is a huge domestic market in India, which is for consumption. There is an opportunity to build India-specific brands, okay? And there's an opportunity to sell online. So suddenly you find WakeFit, actually sold mattresses online. I never thought mattresses could be sold online, but Chaitanya managed to sell mattresses online. Today he's become a sleeping solutions company. Husband-wife duo is selling natural organic cosmetics, juicy chemistry from out of Coimbatore, tier 2 town. Okay, and they're funded as well. So today it is possible to create a brand. Mama Earth has shown it, Beardo has shown it, Licious has shown it, Boat has also shown it, that you can build a domestic electronics, consumer electronics brand and sell largely online as well. So there is this new opportunity of building local India specific brands targeting the huge domestic market. That's thesis 2. Like this, you will find several theses. So many investment banks focus on these theses, and there are acquisition opportunities like Mama Earth was taken over. 1MG was taken over by Tata. Big Basket, also by Tata. Reliance has taken over several other companies. So there are opportunities that like this that come up. And Flipkart, of course, by our Walmart. So there
Brilliant,
are these
sir.
theses. I've given you just two broad theses.
Yes. I think even those two that you have mentioned are very interesting. The thesis number one, you talked about having a global IP and frugal engineering in India and targeting overseas market.
Correct.
With a very, very efficient go-to-market strategies that you have. That is one. And the other one is developing local brands for the needs of India, which is a huge domestic consumption market, and sell online.
Exactly.
I think that's fantastic. I think these two we can relate to when we look around some of the things that are happening dynamically in the ecosystem that we live in and operate. So thank you very much for that, sir. So one question I'll ask, after that, I will request Professor Prasad to come with one question, and then I'll come back to wrap it up. We are inching towards the closure. This question is, business failures definitely damage the confidence level sometimes, reputation sometimes. So these business failures, how do we deal with? How to deal with this impact, including psychological? What is your advice?
So, I think psychological is something that many of us didn't understand or didn't acknowledge. Slowly starting to be acknowledged. One thing that you need, ideally, if you have good co-founders, if you have good co-founders, you can act as each other's cushion. Second, if you have good family support, that's also very important. Like many times you'll find the spouse is a vital piece. If the spouse isn't supportive or something, then you have double trouble. So you need to make sure that there's a lot of communication happening there as well. Thirdly, also, if you find that certain things are there which are going little more awry, I don't think there's any harm in looking at taking some professional help also. But it is still very early days in India. People still have some stigma attached to taking that professional help. But more importantly is, how do you recoup the energy and strength to start again? So I find that there are a lot of entrepreneurs. I started 12 businesses, of which only 2 actually managed to sell. The others just died down, died in their own way. Some of them actually had the potential to become good businesses, but we could not really manage to make it happen. So make it grow. So what happens is, at each stage, how do you recoup yourself? That's very critical. So,
Yes.
like I said, the fundamental thing is, if you can recognize that it is that particular idea or that business that failed, but you still have what it takes to succeed, it is to keep that confidence alive in some way and say, okay, I know where I made wrong in this. Now, in the next one, I'll take correction. Now, the fellow says, right, if I get fooled once, shame on the other guy. But if I get fooled twice, shame on me. So if I make the same mistake twice, I am the stupid guy, right? But if I learn from my first mistake itself, then I am very good. Now, when you become an entrepreneur, you become wiser. So a wise man also learns from the mistakes of others. So you start understanding what mistakes other people are making so that you prevent that from happening. So I think one is to keep the faith. Second is sometimes to conserve your energy, your time, and your resources. Get that back in track. Keep the family also, aligned with you, because very critical. And have a decent set of co-founders or critical people that you can always rely on as a sounding board.
Excellent, sir. I think there are these are recommendations that one can immediately look at, very actively in terms of this. There are surveys, and most of them tell us that co-founders don't get along, and that's why startups have closed. Of course, it's not just applicable to co-founders, but it is applicable to even established organizations as well.
We saw that happen with Mistry and the Tatas.
Yes, yes. So the chemistry and the kind of cushion-like co-founders that you have is a great boon, and one should work on it. Clear communication to elicit family support, spouses support. Very, very clearly, we have seen in many cases, especially the new age enterprises, not just the young co-founders. I'm talking about people who have quit their careers in late 40s and 50s, but they have support from family. They're doing extremely well. There are examples in agriculture. There are examples in organic farming. There are examples in SaaS products. Everywhere we find these examples where family
We have
support.
in Chennai Angels, out of our 70 odd startups, of about 4 or 5 couples.
4 or 5 couples. Great. That's a great example. So and also one thing you touched upon, and it's very, very interesting, that people are wary of taking professional help. I think that's where another issue lies. And if the founders or if the entrepreneurs are hitting troubled waters, I think they should definitely take professional help. And it's all about, as you rightly mentioned, recouping one's own energy and bouncing back. Correct. I think that happens, and professional help probably is required at some of these stages. So thank you, sir. What I'll now do is, you have used many slides in your presentation. They are quotes by some of the entrepreneurs and management gurus and leaders. So there is a saying, you'll have to tell us how justified is this saying, from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
So typically what that means is, first generation struggles and creates the money. Second generation is born with silver spoon and doesn't build on that money. So, and then the third generation has to handle the crisis created by the second generation. So typically they say barely 13% of family businesses survive the second generation. Only 4% continue to the third generation. It's I think if I broadly got the numbers right.
Yeah.
You've seen it even in the Ambani family. First generation, by the second generation itself, the 2 brothers split.
Okay.
Right. So by the third generation, we don't know what can happen. So, there at least I can see one side of the family is accreted. It is grown. Other side has really struggled. So we are seeing even in a large family, size doesn't matter, What really matters is many other things. So this is what I feel that many times happens.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for that response. Thank you very much. May I now request Professor Prasad to quickly come in and take one question, and after that we'll wrap it up. Professor Prasad.
So this question is related to the online MBA that we offer, and more than 90% of the audience are working executives. And as we were mentioning, there are a lot of people with aspirations. Now, we have a course which is called Entrepreneurship Practicum that comes up in the 4th semester, and the student has an option to do a research project otherwise. Okay, because we don't know, what people will end up doing. So the point is that if that is the audience, as opposed to a campus, kind of an audience which is their captive audience, and these people have experience, what are the elements which need to be set in place from the beginning in order to do something which is of a material entrepreneurship practicum? So because there's a choice, they can always do something else if they just want to get the academic part of it. But if you really want to nurture some people who've got powerful ideas and help them take that additional bit, that bit forward, what is it that bit forward that they can do, and what should we do for them in the first 3 semesters in order to nurture it?
Okay, there is a new course by the AICTE. It's called the MBA IEV, Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Venture Development. Have a look at the curriculum for that. In that, the people, the participants have to ideally come up with the idea in semester 1 itself. Why is this important? I wrote about an article for Business Line on this. Is, right from course 1, you can start doing projects all around that idea. Even your summer internship or your virtual internship that you do, or even what you do in your organization, can be revolving around that idea. So it is important that if that fellow comes up with the idea right at the beginning itself, even in a market research project, if he's a course, he takes market research on his idea. He doesn't do it on any other idea. Okay, so there is a sustainability rather than just looking at it in last semester. So I would say that's a very single most important aspect. And is there something in each course that makes that entrepreneurial stream of fellows do that extra bit, which is from that point of view, rather than classic MBA is meant to produce managers, not to produce entrepreneurs. Basically, we're producing what I would call Vishnu types, preservation, rather than either Shiva type, creative destroyer, or Brahma type, which is creator. Okay, I'm just using these names only as placeholders for symbolism to say what they represent. We don't really encourage creative destruction. We really don't encourage new creation. We only encourage preservers. So that needs a tweaking itself of our course. I mean, this has been a long-standing grouse of mine.
Thank you. I just have a supplementary to that. Given if these things are in place, how much can be done? Because one can't overachieve in that particular last semester.
So in the last semester, things come to a boil. So that's what I like this concept that, you have this fair, virtual fair or whatever fair. You even have a demo day that all of them, you bring some 3-4 external chaps and they come and evaluate these people. And then they say, well, and then these people must also have potential customers before that. So one fair is with potential customers, assume that hopefully all of them are consumer products. Assume, not all are B2B. But assume they're all customers and are ladies oriented, but the ladies are the main buyers. Will the ladies buy these products? Why or why not? So then you can, you will get one kind of a actual practitioner view. Similarly, after that, some external experts who come and evaluate those projects. That's a good way of, marking this, rather than just presenting a business plan and we evaluating it, which is typically the default way of doing it.
I think we've got inputs. Thank you. Back to Professor Rao.
Thank you, sir. I think this session can go on and on. I have one question. After that, we can wrap it up, sir. And traditionally, based on what you have spoken and what we have observed all around, we are noticing that people with experience are backed. People with experience or an experiential team is funded far better than freshers and novices. But freshers and novices generally come up with brilliant ideas and business ideas, basically, to start a business. But for sustainability, for doing well, for building in efficiencies and scaling it up, I think there's a great team that is required to work on. So basis this, what I'm saying is that there's a bunch of experienced guys who have been leaders, across businesses, across domains. They can generate potential. They can generate potential business ideas and probably pivot it in a way that you identify a fresher and a youngster who can be baptized into this idea, so to say, in the sense that you recruit a face for your business idea, whereas the idea actually originally comes from experienced lot of people.
Can be done. This is like a corporate incubator.
Yeah.
In some sense, so today what I would encourage actually is a lot of corporate industry institute interface, and that is important, because I think today institutes, many of them don't have enough industry interface, and therefore many of their courses also are not designed for industry. So is there a way that you necessarily don't have AICTE or UGC alone prescribed curriculum? You have other things as well where the student can go a little beyond and do something. So I would recommend that for this, that if you have even 3-4 willing corporates willing to give projects which are going to help them, not just a summer project where they do it as a token, but projects which actually make a kind of, see, I'll give an example. Today, data is a big problem. Many companies don't know how to handle data, but data analytics is an important new subject. Statistics is not very popular for many of the practicing managers. A good MBA institute, suppose it has a strong kick-ass data analytics course, it invests in the relevant software. It tells the company, give me API. Now, looking at it, can I improve operational efficiency of your machines? Project 1. Can I improve the way you're reacting with customers? Can I do some CRM related work for you? Are there ideas that are coming up from there, in improving, say, customer offtake, repeat customer purchase, increasing average order value by the customer? If I go down to that entrepreneurial level, then they'll say, okay, this is how I really look at it. I'm helping this company improve this. I'm also helping this company reduce energy or improve the operational efficiency of machines, or reduce downtime. Can I use data as, for example, as a resource, use my technical skills in data analytics with my students and do something over there? Come up with clear deliverables, because today the construct is give me summer project. So I would say go to an outcome based model rather than an input, that I have so many students, please give them some placement, than an input based model.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for your response. I think outcome based models are where there is enough stakes for the corporate partner as much as the academic partner has, and then it is mission oriented. There are stakes in that, money is involved in that.
Exactly.
It is a real time project.
No, suppose you say if I give you X percentage service saving, give my students and my institute X percentage of that saving. Now you're making an entrepreneurial system, no?
Right. Excellent. I think taking this forward will be very easy, and in the sense that a little bit of reorientation is required for the institutions as well as corporate. Everybody is hard pressed for time. In the bargain, we are throwing away some of these good models and good ideas to build the efficiency for all the stakeholders. Yeah,
Professor Kandwala, my old professor, now no more, he said the bottleneck is at the top of the bottle, sir.
Absolutely. You have given us many one-liners today, sir. These are very, very popular one-liners, but they very succinctly tell you what the story is. So throughout your presentation, I must thank you. You have driven home the point of how these failures can be pivoted to your success in terms of your entrepreneurial ventures. This session has been very interesting, sir. I must thank you from the bottom of my heart that the kind of time that you have spent from 4 p.m. to now 5:30, a little more than 5:30, about 90-95 minutes of your valuable time. I'm very, very thankful to you, along with all others present at ICFAI. And also on behalf of my participants, I would like to thank you for very peacefully, patiently responding to several queries that are sometimes these queries help us reassuring what we are thinking and how we can go back and apply in our own cases. A lot of participants are at mid-level careers. Some of them are leaders in their own way, in their own domain. And several of them probably are considering considering to be an entrepreneur at some point sooner. So I think these inputs and the examples that you have given will definitely help them in embarking on that journey. If that is their dream and they have passion and experience added to that, and I'm sure they will be successful. But the other important takeaway from your talk is that there is nothing like failure. You keep learning. There is either you succeed or you keep learning. That's a very important thing, and you become wiser based on your own failure as well as on the failures of others. You keep observing, then you will gather much more and become much wiser. Overall, this session has been pretty useful, sir. We will attempt a summary on this session and we will share with our audience. Before that, we'll also share a copy with you so that we will put everything together.
A couple of people wanted to see how to get in touch with me.
I will
validate, you know them better. You may validate it and then you can do an email introduction as required, Professor Rao.
I will do that. They can write to us and we'll do that. I thought I'll save the time for taking maximum responses from you than that administrative question connecting. So thank you, sir. We will come back to you. There's a lot more to discuss actually. We have asked a few questions which are related to us as well in terms of our own online MBA program. There are questions related to specific entrepreneurs. There is somebody in the audience who is introduced entrepreneurship at school level, and it's going on across the country. And it is, of course, much more present in Hyderabad and Vizag and Bangalore kind of regions. But it is planning to scale it up across the country. And there are certain lessons. So probably I'll connect them with you on an email, and maybe you can share some inputs to some of the problems that they must be facing.
Yes, sir. Right, and sir? If you can have a formal feedback and send to me, it'll help me also.
I will. I'll gather the feedback, and we have it done at the end of each session, and we'll mail it to you along with the comments on the chat box. We'll
Excellent. That'll be great. Thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining this session, and we will see you on Friday next at 4 p.m. again with yet another interesting leader with a very, very interesting topic again. Till then, do take care and mull over what are the aspects that we have learned about entrepreneurship, how people can escape that valley of death and become a successful entrepreneur.
Thank you.
So see you next week. Till then,
bye-bye.
Goodbye. Good night. Bye-bye.